The air on Zephyra was thin and metallic, carrying a faint hum that vibrated through the fabric of Dr. Elliot Kane's pressure suit. He had landed on the planet's southern hemisphere, an arid landscape dotted with shimmering crystalline formations that reflected the pale light of two distant suns. The desolation was mesmerizing, but it was also a stark reminder of the reports he had read, a once thriving civilization reduced to ruins. Elliot's mission was straightforward: catalog and analyze what remained of Zephyra's biosphere, if any, and assess the archaeological value of its shattered cities. He had been chosen for his expertise in exobiology and his work on deciphering alien languages. Yet, standing amidst the silent wreckage, he felt an overwhelming sense of futility. The structure spires twisted into impossible shapes and domes cracked like eggshells spoke of a people who had been as advanced as they were now utterly gone. Until she appeared. It happened as Elliot was examining what looked like a fractured monolith covered in etched symbols. His handheld scanner beeped erratically, indicating an anomalous energy signature nearby. At first, he assumed it was an artifact, perhaps a dormant piece of technology. Then he heard the faintest of whispers, a sound so delicate he wondered if it was the wind. Turning sharply, he saw her. She emerged from the shadows of a crumbled archway, her form both alien and hauntingly beautiful. Her skin was a deep, iridescent blue that shimmered with faint bioluminescence, like moonlight reflecting on water. Her eyes large, multifaceted, and filled with a sorrow so profound it seemed to pull Elliot into their depths locked onto his. For a moment, Elliot was paralyzed. His training screamed at him to maintain distance, to document, to proceed with caution. But there was something disarming about her, an unspoken plea in her gaze that bypassed logic and struck at something deeper. She spoke, her voice resonating directly in his mind. "Human, you are not of this world, yet you walk among the dead. I am Elira, the last of my kind. Will you hear my story?" Elliot nodded, unable to form words. Elira moved closer, her movements fluid and deliberate, as though gravity obeyed her whims. She gestured toward a nearby structure, a partially intact chamber adorned with more of the intricate carvings. Inside, she began her tale. Elira's people, the Zephyrin, had been a race of dreamers and creators. They had harnessed the energy of their twin suns, crafting a society of unparalleled harmony. Their mastery of genetic science had eradicated disease, while their connection to the planet's crystalline heart allowed them to channel energy in ways that bordered on magic. But progress bred complacency. When the cataclysm came, a celestial body that veered off its course and collided with their planet, they were unprepared. The impact shattered the crystalline network, causing their biosphere to collapse. Those who survived the initial destruction faced a slow, agonizing extinction as their once vibrant ecosystem withered away. Elira had been in stasis, one of a handful of Zephyrans preserved in a desperate attempt to save their species. When she awoke, she was alone. Her people were gone, their cities empty, their songs silenced. Elliot listened in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. He had studied the ruins of countless civilizations, but this was the first time he had stood face to face with a survivor. Elira's pain was palpable, her voice trembling as she spoke of the loneliness that gnawed at her every moment. As she finished, she turned to him, her expression both hopeful and desperate. "You carry the seed of a people who still thrive. You can help restore what has been lost. Will you? For the sake of my kind, for the memory of all who have perished, will you save us?" Elliot's mind reeled. The implications of her request were staggering. Was it even possible? What would it mean for humanity? For him? And yet, as he looked into her eyes, he felt the enormity of her isolation, her grief, and her hope. The hum of the planet's winds filled the silence as Elliot grappled with the question that would define the rest of his life. To be continued. The Zephyrian chamber was a haunting mix of grandeur and decay. Once a place of learning or worship, Elliot couldn't be sure it now stood as a somber monument to a dead civilization. Bioluminescent crystals lined the walls, their dim glow casting Elira's figure in a surreal light as she continued her story. Elliot remained seated on a broken pillar, his mind racing with the gravity of what she had asked of him. "You must have questions," Elira said, her voice a gentle melody that resonated directly in his thoughts. Elliot finally found his voice. "Questions? Where do I even start? This is beyond anything I've ever encountered. What exactly are you asking me to do? And how is it even possible?" Elira stepped closer, her luminous skin rippling faintly, as though responding to her emotions. "I do not ask lightly. My people were masters of genetics, and before the end, we wove our essence into the crystals you see around you. They contain the blueprint of our kind, our DNA, our memories, our songs. But without a living vessel, these remnants will fade. I cannot create life alone. I need a partner to help bring my species back from the brink." Elliot hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Partner? You mean you and me?" She nodded. "Our physiologies are not so different. With the knowledge preserved in these crystals, I can guide the process. Your genetic contribution could help adapt my kind to this new era, to survive in ways we could not before." The scientist in Elliot bristled with questions. The implications of cross-species reproduction, the ethical concerns, the potential consequences for humanity, all of it swirled in his head. But he couldn't deny the allure of her words. This was a chance to make history, to preserve an entire species. "Why me?" he asked finally. "There are other scientists, geneticists who are better suited for this." "You were the one who came," Elira replied simply. "Perhaps it is fate, or perhaps it is chance. But you are here, and I believe you are capable of understanding the importance of this." Over the following days, Elira shared more about her people and their culture. They had been deeply connected to their planet, their cities harmonizing with the natural rhythms of Zephyra. The crystals that lined their environment weren't just decorations, they were alive, resonating with the energy of the Zephyrian people. Through them, memories were shared, knowledge was preserved, and their collective consciousness flourished. Elliot listened intently as she explained their downfall. When the asteroid struck, it fractured the crystalline network, severing the Zephyrians from the lifeblood of their civilization. The ensuing chaos, environmental collapse, disease, and famine wiped out most of the population within a century. Stasis chambers like the one Elira had emerged from were a desperate, last-ditch effort, but most had failed. She was the only one to awaken. Her isolation was profound. For years, she had wandered the ruins, searching for others, speaking to the silent crystals, hoping for an answer. Finding Elliot was more than a miracle, it was her last chance. One evening, as they sat outside the chamber under the dim glow of the twin suns, Elliot finally asked the question that had been gnawing at him. "What happens if I say no?" Elira turned her gaze to the horizon, her expression unreadable. "Then I will remain here, the last of my kind. I will preserve our memories for as long as I can, but eventually they will fade, and Zephyra will become nothing more than a forgotten name among the stars." Elliot felt a pang of guilt. "But it's not fair to ask this of me. I'm just one person. This is too big. Do you think I do not know this?" Elira's voice carried a sharp edge. "I am asking you to carry a weight I can no longer bear alone. I do not ask for myself, I ask for the millions who lived, loved, and dreamed on this planet. I ask for the chance to keep their memory alive." Her words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Elliot looked at her, seeing not just an alien but a being with hopes, fears, and a determination that mirrored his own. As the days passed, Elliot began to see Elira not just as the last of her kind, but as a bridge between two worlds. She wasn't asking him to abandon his humanity, but to expand it, to take a step into the unknown for the sake of something greater. But doubt lingered. He reached out to his team back on Earth, transmitting encrypted reports and seeking guidance. The responses were mixed. Some urged caution, others saw the potential for groundbreaking discoveries. One message from a bioethics advisor stood out: inaction is as much a choice as action. Ask yourself, will you be able to live with the consequences of doing nothing? Elliot spent that night staring at the alien sky, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Elira sat beside him in silence, her presence both a comfort and a reminder of the enormity of her request. By the time the twin suns rose again, Elliot knew he couldn't delay much longer. He turned to Elira, who looked at him with quiet expectation. "I need to understand everything," he said. "How this will work, what it will mean for you, for me, for any children we create. If I agree to this, I need to know it's the right choice." Elira nodded, her expression softening. "Then let us begin. I will show you everything you need to know." The path ahead was uncertain, but Elliot felt a strange sense of resolve. For better or worse, he had become part of something far greater than himself. The days that followed were a whirlwind of revelations and soul-searching. Inside the crystalline chamber, Elira shared the full scope of her plan, guiding Elliot through the vast knowledge preserved by her people. The glowing crystals pulsed with energy, their vibrations carrying data, memories, and even emotions directly into his mind. The process was unlike anything Elliot had ever experienced. He saw visions of Zephyrian cities in their prime, bustling with life, their citizens adorned in shimmering fabrics that responded to their emotions. He heard songs that resonated with frequencies so pure they brought tears to his eyes. He felt their joy, their unity, and, ultimately, their despair as their world crumbled around them. Elira spoke softly as the memories unfolded. "You see now why I cannot let this die. This is more than survival, it is the preservation of everything we were." Elliot nodded, overwhelmed but fascinated. "I understand why this is important to you, but there's still so much I don't know. How would this even work? Creating a new life between us. It seems impossible." Elira gestured to a central crystal that pulsed brighter than the others. "This is the Heartstone. It contains the genetic map of my people and the mechanisms for integrating foreign DNA. With your help, we can create offspring that blend the best of our two species, ensuring survival in this new era. Your biology will act as the foundation, but they will still be distinctly Zephyrian." Her words were both reassuring and daunting. Elliot's mind raced with questions about ethics, responsibility, and the practicalities of what she proposed. And what about the children? What kind of lives would they have? Would they belong to humanity, to your people, or to neither? "They will belong to themselves," Elira replied simply. "But they will carry the legacy of both our worlds. They will have the strength to survive and thrive, no matter where their path takes them." The debate Elliot sent another detailed report to Earth, this time outlining the full scope of Elira's plan. The response was swift and polarizing. His superiors were intrigued but cautious, recognizing the unprecedented nature of the situation. The Bioethics Council issued a formal statement: "While the potential benefits are extraordinary, the risks, both scientific and moral, are equally significant. Proceed with extreme caution." Privately, Elliot's colleagues were divided. Some praised him for even considering such a monumental step, calling it an act of bravery and progress. Others accused him of overstepping his bounds as a scientist, warning of unintended consequences. One message, from a close friend, struck a nerve: "Elliot, you're not just making a decision for yourself. You're making a decision for humanity. Are you ready for that kind of responsibility?" Elliot couldn't answer. A moment of clarity, the tipping point, came during an evening conversation with Elira. They sat outside the chamber under the dim glow of the twin suns, their light casting long shadows across the crystalline landscape. Elliot broke the silence. "What if I say yes, and it goes wrong? What if the children aren't viable, or worse, they suffer because of what we've done?" Elira looked at him with a tenderness that caught him off guard. "Do you think I haven't asked myself these questions? I have had centuries to imagine every possible outcome. But I also know that doing nothing guarantees only one thing: the end of my people. Hope is the only choice I have left. Her words settled over Elliot like a blanket of inevitability. For the first time, he truly saw her not just as a survivor but as a symbol of resilience, a beacon of hope for something greater than either of them. "What about you?" he asked. "If this works, what happens to you?" Elira's expression softened. "If it works, my purpose will be fulfilled. I will guide you and our children for as long as I am able. And when my time ends, I will go knowing that we created something beautiful." The decision. The next morning, Elliot stood before the Hearthstone, its glow filling the chamber with a warm, pulsating light. Elira stood beside him, her presence calm but expectant. "I've made my decision," Elliot said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "I'll do it. But only if we do it together, as equals. This isn't just about preserving your people, it's about creating something new, something that honors both of us." Elira smiled, a rare and genuine expression that transformed her face. "Thank you, Elliot. Together, we will ensure that neither of our worlds is forgotten." She extended a hand toward him, and as their fingers touched, the Hearthstone flared to life. Crystals around the chamber began to hum in unison, their light intensifying as the process began. Elliot felt a surge of energy coursing through him, a connection forming between him, Elira, and the ancient knowledge embedded in the crystals. For the first time, Elliot felt the weight of his decision lift, replaced by a sense of purpose. This wasn't just about survival, it was about creation, legacy, and the hope for a future where two worlds could become one. The Hearthstone chamber was a flurry of light and energy as the ancient Zephyrian knowledge and Elliot's contribution melded into a singular, unprecedented fusion. The process was equal parts science and art, guided by Elira's knowledge of her people's genetic mastery. Elliot stood at the center of it all, connected to the crystalline network, feeling his mind, body, and soul interwoven with something greater than himself. For hours, the chamber pulsed with life. Elira worked with serene precision, her hands moving in intricate patterns across the crystals as she guided the energies. Elliot could sense her focus, her determination, and above all, her hope. The first creation days later, the first embryonic life form was created, a hybrid entity unlike anything that had ever existed. Encased in a crystal pod, it shimmered with a soft, golden light, a perfect union of Zephyrian and human DNA. Elira's gaze softened as she stared at the pod, her luminous eyes glistening. "This is the beginning," she whispered. "A bridge between two worlds." Elliot felt a swell of emotions, pride, wonder, and a profound sense of responsibility. He reached out to place a hand on the crystal surface, feeling a faint vibration. "What happens next?" he asked. "We nurture it," Elira replied. "It will grow quickly, adapting to the environment we provide. When it is ready, it will emerge as the first of a new generation." A world reacts back on Earth. The news of Elliot's decision sent shockwaves through scientific and political communities. The encrypted reports he had been sending were now public knowledge, sparking heated debates across the globe. Some hailed him as a hero, a pioneer who had taken humanity's first step toward interspecies coexistence. Others condemned him, calling his actions reckless and unnatural. Elliot received messages of support and criticism in equal measure. One from his former mentor stood out: "Elliot, what you've done is extraordinary. Whether history sees it as triumph or folly, only time will tell. But know this, you've changed the course of our species forever." Despite the chaos, Elliot found solace in his work with Elira. Together, they monitored the growing life form, making adjustments and preparing for its eventual emergence. Each day brought new challenges, but also new discoveries about the potential of their hybrid creation. The first child months later, the pod cracked open, and the first hybrid child emerged. The being was small and delicate, with shimmering, iridescent skin and features that blended human and Zephyrian traits. Its eyes glowed faintly, and when it looked at Elliot and Elira, it cooed softly, a sound that resonated with both of them. Elira knelt beside the child, her expression radiant with joy and relief. Welcome, she said softly, cradling the child in her arms. You are the hope of two worlds. Elliot felt tears well in his eyes as he looked at the child, feeling an overwhelming sense of awe. What do we call it? He asked. Elira tilted her head, considering. In our tongue, it would be called Veara, which means new dawn. Veara, Elliot repeated, the name rolling off his tongue. It felt fitting. Building the future. The success of Veara marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for Elliot and Elira, but for their shared legacy. Over time, more hybrid children were created, each unique but connected by their shared heritage. They grew rapidly, displaying abilities and traits that blended the strengths of both species. They could breathe the thin air of Zephyra, harness the planet's crystalline energy, and think with a clarity and creativity that astonished both Elliot and Elira. Elliot recorded every step of the process, sending detailed reports back to Earth. Slowly, the narrative began to shift. Skepticism gave way to curiosity, and debates about ethics transformed into discussions about possibility. Humanity began to see the hybrids not as threats, but as an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to expand their understanding of life in the universe. Elira's farewell. As the hybrid community flourished, Elira began to fade. The centuries she had spent in stasis and the effort of guiding the genetic process had taken their toll. One evening, as the twin suns set over the crystalline ruins, she called Elliot to her side. My time is ending, she said softly, her voice filled with both peace and sadness. Elliot knelt beside her, his heart heavy. Elira, no. We still need you. The children need you. She smiled faintly, reaching out to place a hand on his. They no longer need me. You have given them a future. And in them, I will live on. As the light of the suns faded, Elira's bioluminescent glow dimmed. With a final, gentle smile, she closed her eyes, her body dissolving into a cascade of shimmering light that drifted into the crystalline air. Elliot sat in silence, the loss cutting deep. But as he looked around at the hybrid children who had gathered, their luminous eyes filled with curiosity and promise, he knew that Elira's legacy would endure. A new dawn. Years later, Elliot stood on the surface of Zephyra, watching as the hybrid community transformed the ruins into thriving settlements. The planet was slowly coming back to life, its ecosystem adapting to the presence of its new inhabitants. Veara, now a young leader, stood beside Elliot, their gaze fixed on the horizon. What do you see? Elliot asked. Veara smiled, their iridescent eyes reflecting the light of the twin suns. I see a future, they said. One where both our worlds can thrive. Elliot felt a swell of pride and hope. Together, they had done the impossible. They had turned despair into possibility, and loss into a new beginning. As the twin suns rose higher, Elliot looked to the sky, wondering what other worlds might one day join their shared legacy. For now, though, he was content to stand on Zephyra, a world reborn, with the children of two species by his side.